Evening lads, and welcome to the Idiot's Guide to Writing and Content Creation. This video was inspired by a tweet Random Call Sign made a few days ago, in which he talked about having writer's block in regards to making sim racing videos, and I figured I'd take the time out of my day to explain the entire creative process that I go through whenever I sit down to make either a YouTube video or a written article, or even some of the extracurricular stuff that I've worked on that a lot of people aren't privy to. So who am I and what makes me qualified to make this video? For starters, my name is Austin Ognoski. For a couple of years, I ran a sim racing opinions blog called Pretend Race Cars with a couple buddies of mine, and it was just a very hypercritical look at sim racing and racing games in general. Took a few years off, eventually came back with a YouTube podcast that I hope will return shortly, covering basically the same topic and just being hypercritical of race car games. Away from the computer, I've worked on government healthcare documents, which unfortunately I can't show you guys because all that stuff's mostly under NDA. I've done public speeches, which I'm not going to get too much into, but I've done some public speaking behind the scenes. I've also written my own novel, and it's got one of the highest ratings for any young adult novel on a site called Indie Reader over the past 3 or 4 years. So I don't have a university degree or anything, but this is generally what's worked for me and been successful for me in basically any writing endeavor that I've tried. The first and most important step to avoiding writer's block in the first place is to always make use of the Notes app on your phone and constantly be jotting ideas down. If you're riding the bus or you're taking a shit or you're out with friends and just an idea hits you, you need to be able to save that because you might need it at a later date. In terms of sim racing content, there's basically an entire batch of articles and videos that haven't been made yet that are just sitting as ideas on my phone. And sometimes I'll go the extra mile and start fleshing out an outline for those ideas, so when it comes to actually sitting down and recording a video or writing an article or just doing whatever with it, I'm basically ready to go. Once you're ready to start work on your idea, regardless of whether it's a YouTube video or just a long form article or a short story or a novel or whatever, you can't just start writing. What you need to do next is plan out the entire fucking thing in point form. So let's say this is 3 or 4 years ago and I'm working on an article for a website. I would then write down in point form one sentence to describe what every single paragraph in my article would be about. And then under each point for that paragraph, I would jot little notes like mention X or mention Y. For YouTube videos, I actually follow the same template. I would just write my 5 key points I wanted to mention and spend about 2 minutes covering each. And then again, under each main point, I would jot down mention X or mention Y. For short stories or novels, which 99% of you guys aren't even going to bother with, but I'm going to mention it anyway, you just take this concept and you expand it as much as possible. So, for example, with my novel, with it having 20 chapters, I instead split those into a front half and a back half of each chapter. So I essentially had 40 total bullet points to work with instead of 20. And then under them, I would decide, okay, I want my intro to last approximately this long. I want the climax to be around here. I want these plot points to occur here, here, and here on the timeline. And then you literally just fill in the blanks and say, okay, first half of chapter 1 is going to be this, second half is going to be this. First half chapter 2 is going to be this, second half is going to be this. And you essentially drag pieces of your story into this 40-part template. Once you actually get to the point where it's time to sit down and make your YouTube video or write your article or work on, let's say a school assignment, because I know some guys will be watching for help with that, write everything completely out of order. Obviously, with the magic of computers, you can click and drag shit around, you can copy paste stuff, make full use of this. Go look back at your outline, look at the bullet point that has the most notes under it, and start writing from there, and then just copy and paste everything into order once you're done with it. It's a lot more efficient to get your piece of content 80% done and be stuck on what to write for the intro than to be staring at a blank Microsoft Word document or a Sony Vegas dashboard. Intros and conclusions also generally just summarize what's in the body of your work, and it's really difficult to write those if you haven't actually written anything yet. So you want to do those last so you can just reference stuff you've already talked about instead of being like, what the fuck am I going to say? In regards to short stories and novels, this has a bunch of added benefits as well. If you want to include any sort of foreshadowing or any sort of referencing to something that happened earlier in the book, you can work on those chapters back to back, and that'll help you get all the details right and make it as big of a plot point as you want it to be. If you're working on some sort of novel or short story with heavy subject matter, and you don't want to bum yourself out and write a depressed chapter on a Friday night, you can go fuck off and work on a completely different part of the book and still make progress on the project. The last benefit to working on a project out of order, whether again it be a YouTube documentary or just a long form YouTube video or a short story or novel, is that people won't be able to tell if your writing style has changes. Now, what happens if you write some sort of long form article from A to B is that your writing style will gradually, or your speaking style will gradually change over time as you get more comfortable with playing around with words and all that shit. Writing out of sequence, the average person won't be able to pick up on this. Now, the last piece of advice I have for content creators is to constantly find ways to trim the length of your content. When I first had my website, I found it very easy to fall into the trap of trying to cram every single thing I could into an article, even if it was just a review on a retro video game. And these articles quickly ballooned into 4,000 and 5,000 word odysseys. Now, I had fun writing them, and a lot of people loved how it got them through their whole lunch break or how they could binge on articles in a class they didn't like in school. But as a content creator, you're going to get very burnt out doing this. On top of that, people's attention spans in 2020 are much different than they were 10, even 5 years ago. And if you want your content to do well and have a pretty big audience, you have to deliver what you want to say as efficiently as possible. Anyway, that's basically it. See ya.